afternoon, everyone. There's very little energy in the room. Good afternoon, everyone. Great. It gives me a great pleasure, and first time being a moderator. Apologies for my voice. It was in the karaoke last night. So, our esteemed panelists, if I can bring in Jad Shamseddin, Tapan Piplani, Chadi, Hauch, and Stephan. All right, great. So something that's very close to my heart is franchising, and I work with majority of you as our third-party operators. So we'll ask a few questions, and of course I wanted to leave some questions for our audience because I have received some messages that you all wanted to ask few questions. All right, so first question to you, Jad, if you're okay. Brilliant. So over the years, Jad, you've seen the third-party operator increasing preferences in our market. What's the reason behind this, and which markets have shown maximum growth?
Well, am I heard? Yeah. So we know the third party is kind of hybrid management agreement where you have a brand and a third party operator coming together to manage a property for the owner. The reason that it started to increase, at least in this part of the world, as you know, is very dominant in the US and Europe, is the fact that first, owners have learned and been educated over the past few years with many players coming to the market in that space, but also it's because it has proven to be a very hands-on management approach, as well as flexible, more flexible than would normally be in the case of management agreement with the brand. There's also another factor, which is the know-how that has grown up in the market here over the past years. You know, many years ago, it was only the brand owner who would know how to operate their brands. Today, you have more experience accumulated over the years, and that helps a lot. There are many factors, of course, being also related to the alignment with the owners. You know, every owner has specific agenda, and third-party operator would be able to adapt to individual owners a little bit more than the brand operator. I mean, these are among many of the other reasons. With regards to the markets that have seen a growth, I mean, eventually, you know, Saudi was all the growth everywhere. You could tell that it is one of the fast-growing market, and there is much more need for operators that maybe the brands are unable to deliver. It's a very large territory that requires physical presence, and that's where we come in as well. But also Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Qatar, we've seen a lot of growth and demand for third-party management. So I think it's coming across the region in a very fast speed.
Great. And has the model evolved between smaller properties to larger, between business versus leisure?
Totally. I can tell you, I mean, at least from Aleph perspective, definitely we're managing resorts, we're managing business hotel, city hotel, large and small as well. Multiple brands, so we have the overall experience of the brand needs. Yes, it has evolved, and it's not restricted anymore to individual owner. You have institutional owners with multiple property that have valued the importance of third-party operators, so they can basically, you know, cluster functions, save money, but also have better control.
Great. Anything, Tapan, you'd like to build on of what Jad just mentioned?
Well, Jad's, you know, obviously on the point. He's covered almost everything. But from our perspective, I think the belief in our model comes from actual execution and the experience. So I think we as Valor, because we've been able to set up an office, hire a great team, operate, you know, almost 1,000 keys in Dubai now with a sizable F&B operation, we are able to show the owners the results. And I think at the end of the day, the results would win confidence and would only develop this particular model even further. So we're confident of growing this portfolio and, you know, helping all the other partners to come in together to grow this model even more.
And if you were to explain a layman, what is a third-party management company? What would you say, Tapan?
There are no laymen here at all. The whole audience is our experts here. So, well, thank you for filling up the room. We'll need a bigger room next time. But look, it's a partnership. It's a collaboration. That's what third-party arrangement is. We are an independent hotel management company that helps the owners, in most cases, sign up a franchise with one of the global brands or a leading brands or a brand that is very important and specific to the property that they own. We go into that asset, we talk to the owners, we understand their need, we identify what is the right brand that could fit in for that property. There are a lot of things to be checked there. And then we help them, in many cases, negotiate a contract, franchise contract, and we go in as the operator. So many a times we ask this question on whether we do only consultancy and advisory. No, we are in there with the owners. Majority of our fees comes from the success of the owners, and hence, we are completely committed to delivering the results. So we do technical services support, design and planning support, pre-opening services, management services, and deliver the results both for the owner and the brand.
Great. Thank you, Tapan. Moving on, my next question to Chadi. I've got a couple of questions for you, if you're okay. So it's mostly understood why an owner would want to work with a third-party management company. Are there any instances where the third-party model would be more appealing to a brand like Marriott?
Yes, definitely. Because from our perspective, maybe I'll just back up a little bit and give a bit of a background. There is this preconception for in the market, and especially in the region, not outside of this region, where operators are only focused on managed, and whether it's managed or franchise, the operator would prefer a managed model. This is a little bit skewed because, effectively, from an operator perspective, whether it's a managed or a franchise, in the end, we're growing our flagships, and we are putting flags right, left, and center in the countries, and it's only promotes that growth. So whether it's a managed or a franchise, this is put in front of the owner to see what the owner wants. In certain cases, when the owner prefers to have a little bit more control over his assets, they opt for that third-party operator, and we are very fine for this with a big caveat, of course, making sure that the brand standards are maintained, because in the end, that's the main thing that we're selling. From an operator perspective, as long as we make sure that the Courtyard by Marriott or the Aloft is still competing at the level that the Courtyard by Marriott should be competing, we have done most of our jobs. And we need to make sure that this remains there. So in a nutshell, it doesn't really matter for us whether it's a manager or a franchise, as long as our flag is there and it's well represented. And in the end, it's whatever the owner is comfortable with. And it's very nice to see that the owners are becoming more and more prone to franchise, because hospitality is not a minority in their investments anymore. It's becoming a more important investment, and because of that importance in their portfolio, they want to have that extra control that comes through third party or through a straightforward franchise agreement.
So would you be more comfortable in destinations where the risk appetite is low for Marriott, or how would it be?
Where the
Risk appetite is low. So do you look at destinations where it's safer to go, or risk appetite is low, or would you look at all areas across Middle East to franchise?
The way we would look at it would be from a presence perspective, right? Because when we manage a property, you need a certain support, especially from our headquarters, right? So whenever we look at secondary cities, for example, whenever we look at secondary cities where we don't have any presence, obviously the franchise model would look more appealing. Now, there are instances where, for example, a third-party operator who sometimes is more risk-averse and doesn't mind going to these secondary cities, happens to have one or two hotels already existing. So, and for third-party operators, I assume my colleagues here agree, it's a game of scale. So the more hotels you have, the more it makes sense for them. So it happens that they have one or two hotels already in these cities. It only makes sense for them to take over this hotel and manage it if we're already working with them.
Great. And how would you say brands are supporting franchise across Middle East Africa?
Sorry, Amith, can I add
Yeah,
something
please.
to what Chadi said? I think it's fair to say that even tier 2 locations in tier 1 cities, we see a great opportunity for franchise, especially if, let's say a place like Business Bay, if the brand is already maxed out on the number of properties they want to manage, another property comes in, perhaps there is an opportunity, and in fact, there should be an opportunity to franchise. So that also happens. And also just to, address another thing, he mentioned Courtyard by Marriott's in 4 points. We want to hear JW and Intercontinental one day. So we'll get there.
Slowly but surely.
I have a question later on luxury lifestyle, but keep that in. So the question, Chadi, to you was, how does the brand support franchising, considering that for years we've been only talking about managed? So in terms of key cities or key locations, is there any effort by the brand operator? And this is a question that came in from one of our owners saying, while we hear a lot around brand, how do we hear more about franchising of a brand?
So I think what we went through with Marriott, and especially after the merger with Europe, is a big indication of a change of mindset. Because we have been used to manage properties here in the region. And when you have a certain habit of doing certain things, if you ask someone who is managing a property to help out on the franchise side, it's a little bit difficult to change that mindset. And when we merged with Europe that had already a very pre-established franchised team, we discovered that actually it's a completely different way of working, where it's really a hands-off kind of situation. And that optics that was transferred into Middle East and Africa helped a lot with the franchise development over here. One thing that we do as Marriott, which just recently moved from the US to Europe as well, is that, let's put it this way, if you haven't driven a Ferrari before and you get into the Ferrari directly, you might have difficulties driving it, right? But if you had that course in advance, it will help you get started quite fast. And within Marriott, if you don't know how to work the systems, because in the end, that's the power, right? It's our reservation systems, it's our loyalty programs. If you don't know how to operate them, you will not be able to maximize its efficiency. And we established a certain program where anybody who hasn't worked within the Marriott hotels, any GM who hasn't worked with Marriott can go to Europe, go through a course of around 6 months, and get completely brainwashed on how the Marriott system works. Okay. And we've seen that course work extremely well in the US, and we just transferred it recently to Europe.
So this is an owner's course, or is it a course for the general managers?
So it's a course for anybody who's gonna operate a franchised Marriott hotel. So it can be an owner himself who decided on his own to have a friend of his come and manage his hotel, so you can send him there. Or it's available for third-party operators as well, who can go through that course to help them out. So,
great. Is it mandatory or is it optional?
No, it's optional.
And it's not free.
I know, Stephan, we haven't had a question for you. Don't feel too lonely.
Don't worry.
Question from an owner's perspective, Stephan, for you. What are the advantages of having a third-party operator? Why would we not give it to a brand to manage?
Well,
and from an asset management, it's even easier to put performance clauses. So why would you, what do you think are the motivation from an owner's perspective to have a third-party management company?
Okay. So let's start with the beginning. First of all, there's a misconception about that franchise is more expensive because you have two parties involved. So that's not the case. So that's the first part we have to eliminate with owners, that they think there's two parties involved. I do think we need to go back a little bit to when HMAs start coming into the industry. I was lucky to run one of the first 5-star hotels in Dubai, the Sheraton Creek, which had a management agreement of 13 pages. Since then, we have quite evolved. The brands have become very different. The brands have become about growing the brand, growing their footprint, whereas in the old days, it was about physically running the property. Now it's more about expansion, distribution, and owning the customer. That's their main objective today. Having said that, I'm not sure if you ever tried to explain to someone out of the industry how an HMA works. Someone invests 50, 100 million, signs a contract for 25 years, takes all the risk, and has nothing to say. When I explain this to other friends of mine who are in other industries, say that's impossible. I say that's how our industry works. So having this split between operation and brands is really check and balance between running the property and choosing the brand which basically adds value to your property. So having the disconnect between the two, I think from an owner, if he understands how it works and basically says, I can keep my operator, I can change the brand, or I can keep the brand and change the operator, because there are two different things. One, your operator is about adding value to your property and doing the best for your property. Actually, he represents the owner. He has to run the property. So having seen this over the last 10, 20 years evolve, and seeing how the large hotel operators have changed also. Today, the Marriott, Hilton, Hyatt, Interconti, it's about distribution. That's what the added value brings. So for me as an owner, what do I want from a brand? Or what do I want from an operator? You know, having a great restaurant, having the best quality of service, you know, that's about operation. If it's about bringing the customers at the cheapest price to my thing, that's the brand doing for me. Now, in the old days, it was not really like this, because in the old days, you have the call service center, but that represented 3-4% of your, or 5% of your revenues. The rest was about the logo on your building. Today, it's about what can the brand bring to my bottom line. And I've done a lot of interviews with people and say, well, if you change your brand, you could add value to your property very quickly. Changing brand. You don't have to change your operator, but your brand could change it a lot. And again, that's also why the differentiation is happening today between the larger brands, which they all focus on distribution, and all the small brands get absorbed by them, but that's another issue. So I think it's about explaining to owners, investors, what's the added value, and let them decide. First of all, they go to management agreement with a brand, or they go to an operator with the additional brand. They can make that choice if they don't want to operate themselves.
So I understood from why an owner would need a brand, which is, you spoke about global support network, integrated distribution, marketing initiatives. But why would an owner want a third-party operator? Is it because of economies of scale? Is it because of clustering?
First of all, if he doesn't want, he has to decide if he wants to run it himself. He has the expertise. If he doesn't want to run it himself, he has the choice. Either he gives it to a third-party operator, either he chooses the brand operator together. But he needs to make this assessment to say where do I have the trust? Again, in our case, we are owners from our origin, are owners, so we run the properties as they would be ourselves. We defend ourselves against the operators. I worked as a GM for an operator many years, and sometimes you get instructions that say, who's adding this decision, who's it adding value to the brand or to the property? So it's an interesting discussion you can have. If somebody has to fly from the US business class to attend a cocktail party, you say, is it adding value to my property, or is it adding value to someone sitting far away? But okay, it's practical decisions, and I'm not saying there's huge discrepancies, but there are decisions made, which is not small decisions, which sometimes can penalize your property just because someone, somewhere in the world, makes a decision, not even understanding the impact this has on your property. When I was in Bangkok in my last job, somebody decided to change the word about, for the club lounge, we should serve premium wine instead of wine. Now in Thailand, the cost of premium wine, same as in Dubai, it's times 7 or times 10. So all of a sudden, we spent $100,000 more in the club lounge for the wine in 1 month. So you can imagine, and that's just somebody in the office somewhere add the word premium, and it was a trainee. So the question is, who pays for it?
Sure. And if you were to talk about the future trends of third-party and franchising, and you just signed 2 vignettes with Intercontinental Hotel Group, and I'm sure luxury and lifestyle as a space is also into franchising. What are your thoughts around it? And what could also be the opportunities, and I'll come back to you, Jad, on what are the challenges if you see as third-party operating luxury lifestyle hotels?
No, I think the future, I mean, obviously, an owner, an investor needs to make the assessment, do I put all my eggs in one basket? For me, the owner, the operator brand is like a check and balance. You don't give a carte blanche to someone for 25 years. You keep somehow the two parties not competing to each other, but adding value to what they're supposed to do. And I think owner has to make a decision. Now, the brand operators need to understand they're not competing, they're competitors. But what we also see at the same time that the third-party operators are coming into the play, you also see that actually the brand operators trying to get away from the operation. I mean, coming from some of the operators, it's not abnormal. You see regional VPs taking care of 70, 80, 90 hotels, 90 direct reports to one VP, please explain me. It's so, and you go back to the evaluation of the operators on the stock exchange. Some operators get a better quoting because they have more franchising. So I can understand why some operators would move into that direction to get more to franchising, because they get their stock price will go higher. So I think it's an automatic shift we're seeing, because if you're an operator and you have more franchising, there's no risk. You don't have to get involved. You basically have minimal staffing. So it's a lot more risk-free for them. So the shareholders prefer it. So they're pushing that direction. Definitely after COVID, we have seen a very clear shift from the large operators into that direction.
Yeah. Great.
If I can just
Sure.
just add on that point, actually, in regards to the franchise versus managed. The thing is, operators are not really getting into the franchise. We are a franchise company. When you look at Marriott, we are majoritarily a franchise company. In the US, you have more than 70% of our inventory that is franchise. Here in the region, it's coming slowly, and this is something that we are very excited about, because, very frankly, you grow much faster under the franchise model rather than the managed model. And when you look at, for example, we take the history a little bit as an example. When we look at Europe, within our development in Marriott, 10 years ago, the European development team used to sign 60% managed and 40% franchise. Now it's the complete opposite. In the Middle East here, just recently, 2-3 years ago, franchise started popping up, and slowly more and more with the investors that take hotels as a primary investment for them. Right now, our pipeline for the UAE is around 60% franchise. Yeah. So it is a movement that will come, and it will surely come. It's just taking some time of education.
So in terms of mid-market versus luxury, that was my original question. I understand manage and franchise. Where do you think are the opportunities versus challenges? Jad?
So Amith, if I may just mention another thing. One thing we have to be very conscious of as you look to all the brands, as you look to scale up on the franchise, owner-operated franchise versus having a third-party operator is going to be the larger question. I think what's very important to see is, has the owner invested capital, time, energy, experience into building a team that is capable enough to run a franchise for a long term? Or is it that you are putting your reputation as a brand at risk by allowing an owner to operate it? Because there's a clear conflict of interest if things are not really kept in check and in control on the EBITDAs and the profits versus the brand reputation. What we as operator do is that we want to work with all of you, with the owners, with the brand, so we try to bring that balance in. I think we are the bridge, we are the link, and we're happy to ensure that this model succeeds, both for the brand as well as for the owners. To come to mid-scale luxury, there's no challenge at all. We as an operating entity, as an operator, and I'm sure Jad and Stephan will agree, we've got a team that is capable of operating from luxury all the way down to economy. A lot of us in Valor come from luxury background. So, we've operated luxury hotels. In fact, for a lot of us, the mind shift was the other way around. How to operate mid-scale, economy, and upper mid-scale hotels efficiently and effectively. Whereas now, if we can go back into operating luxury, and we operate some luxury hotels, we operate some really boutique luxury hotels around the world that do really well. We're very proud of them. We hope to add some of these assets here and hotels here in the region.
Great. Anything else to
I
build
believe
on?
it is a perception. I mean, if you look at IAG, for instance, you have the Holiday Inn Express and you have the Regent, right? So it's not different for us. It is, I mean, you would have different teams for different level of management and different type of properties. So we are able to handle both. And I don't think luxury is a different approach in terms of delivering the experience to the customer. So if the customer is coming into franchise property or managed property, they shouldn't feel any different. But that applies at all levels, right? Okay. And that's going to change. It's still a perception in this market. It's not across Europe and the US. There are a lot of luxury properties managed by third-party operators. It's going to come here. It's, again, a matter of taking a little bit of time before it happens.
Great. Thank you. Now the elephant in the room, and this is a bigger one. I think let's have an open conversation. Why would an owner pay two fees? A fees to the brand, a fees to the third party. And how do you justify this by having, do you deliver more than a brand? Do you want to give an owner guarantee? And I thought we'll have an open conversation by having a point of view from each one of you.
You're a troublemaker, Amith. Well, again, to be fair, and I think Stephan just tapped on this minutes ago, you don't end up paying more if you hire a third-party operator and combine it with a brand. For many reasons. One, the third-party fees are a little bit more flexible than you would normally have from brand direct management. But it's also very important to shed the light that it's not saving in fees, it's saving in operational costs, right? And with no offense to the brand, but as explained, they have a large number of properties in each market that require focus, and a dozen or for a few dozens of people reporting to one person doesn't give the focus that the property requires. We can do that. Right? We are able to focus, we are able to align, as I said, our interests with the owner's interests. Whatever they are, we work for the client is the owner, right? But of course, we protect the brand, and that's why brands entrust companies like us with their brand. So it's where we can focus more, we can do things a little bit differently, we can prioritize what is needed for the brand and for the property from the brand perspective without jeopardizing the promise of the brand, right? And that's eventually saving costs, delivering higher profits to the owner. And that's what any business owner wants to have. So it's definitely not on the saving from fees.
And would you give an owner guarantee?
So, Amith, I'll address the larger question. It's not the elephant in the room, because it's the first question we get asked in every meeting we walk into. So I'm surprised you didn't open with that. It's a relief. But
I want to keep the best for the last, right?
But we always tell the owner, like Jad said, that it's a wrong question. How much value can we add to your business? How can we grow your GOPs and EBITDAs? I think that is a larger question, which what we as a team do is that we've got reference, we've got records. We allow our prospective owners to speak to our other owners. I think that's the biggest reference that you can get. We allow them to speak to other owners who we operate hotels for, to tell them how we improved. And many of them have done these reference checks on us, and we've been fortunate enough to come through a few RFPs and win them, because we've been able to showcase that it's not a paper exercise, but there's actual proof that we've grown EBITDAs and GOPs by both adding to the top line and reducing costs. So focus approach is not only on reducing cost, but it's also on growing revenue. We've grown, in certain cases, we've just completely doubled the food and beverage revenue, for instance, because of the focus that we bring in. We've grown the ADRs versus the comp set. We've changed the comp set to make sure that it's more competitive. And what all that has done is given higher flow-throughs to the owner. Because it's no rocket science that anybody who would look at the two top-line fees would know that that fees is going to be higher when the brand and the operator comes together. But how that translates to, even then, despite that higher 1 basis point or 2 basis points higher on the top-line fees, how can you drive another 9, 10, 11 points on the GOP or EBITDA is, I think, really what should matter to an owner. And if we are able to showcase this, we win the contract. If we don't satisfy that condition suitably enough or well enough, then we don't.
And Chadi, do you hear a lot of owners talking about this when you have a third party
So yeah,
compared to a management contract?
usually that's one of the first questions that comes across, and usually I turn to Tapan, I tell him, "It's yours, buddy." But yeah, I mean, from our perspective, from the operator perspective, there's no questions on why the owner should pay the fees to the operators, because obviously we bring the system and the loyalty program and everything. But I think I just want to clarify one thing on the third party operators. And I'm lucky enough to be part of very experienced third-party operators on this panel who knows this very well. Usually, there's a preconception that whenever you speak with an owner or somebody in the market, whenever you talk about third-party operators, the first thing they think of, okay, it's all about cost cutting, and we need to make sure that you're making the most of the money. Where actually, the reality, that's not the case. It's not cost cutting, but it's a real balance between cost-cutting and making sure that the brand standards stay there, right? And it's these third-party operators who do that extremely well, making sure that the owner is still taken care of, but at the same time, the brand isn't hurt, because in the end, that's what brings in the money.
As you say, it's a check and balance. It's a check and balance that makes sure that there's no. I don't think there's always an intention from the brands to basically, but some of the brands have grown so large, and as an owner, I was sitting 20 years on an operator, and then the last 5 years I worked pretty hard with a lot of brands as an owner, and one of the things is the size of the companies have grown that big. And when decisions need to be made in a company with 5, 6, 7,000 hotels, once you make a decision to do a certain thing, you need to think very deep because it has impact on 7,000 hotels. And I got a few examples about the operators that say, well, we made the wrong decision and we did very bad because of that. So they're very careful when they make decisions. It always goes to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 layers of approval, and it takes 1, 2, 3 years before decisions sometimes are taken, whereas if you're an individual operator, you can make maybe with a different risk model, but that's where it always comes down to. It's about the risk model, and that's where we need to go back a few to what I said in the beginning. The risk model in hotel investments has changed dramatically to where it was 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Today, you basically need to assess where do my risk as an owner lay, and if I need to make a decision, do I need really approval of a brand of an owner that goes to 3 or 5 or 7 layers, or basically can I make that risk assessment myself? Okay, it is my risk, but my hotel is my risk as well. So it's a question of weighing off. And I think the model with higher end brands is a little bit more complicated because it's not about just checking in, it's about creating the guest experience. We run Luxury Collection, Mövenpick, Windham. Recently we joined with Vignette Collection. So in that upper segment hotels, we in UHM, that makes us a little bit more special about running in this fine line, and that's why brand operators always are a little bit more resistant to give this to independent operators. But I think once the trust level is there, I think it's coming already. There's only a few brands that are not being franchised today. So it's a question of, can we coexist together? And I do believe what I see from the large brands, brand operators, there's definitely interest to have that coexistent like it's happening already in the US, to have this come to here, because I believe sincerely the shareholders say it's a win-win.
So I do hear about third-party operators and how the coexistence can be there between brand and the third party. But what does a third party bring in more than a brand operator? So if I'm an owner and I was to choose between a franchise agreement by myself, a franchise agreement with a third-party operator, or a management agreement?
I'm going to give you one thing. Have you ever received the CapEx from the regional office where you have to go through it? And then somebody says, that and that and that we don't need. They say, wow, so who's making a call on what? Now, sometimes it's short-sighted, but sometimes it's also a global direction. Now, the question is, you always need to somehow being able to translate the need into whatever your needs are or your customer's need is. If one of the operators wanted to have Wi-Fi in the elevators, now, at a certain moment you need to assess, if I'm on a resort and the building is 3 floors high, do I really need for this 15 seconds in the elevator, do I need to have Wi-Fi? It just cost me $200,000 to put it in. Now, do I want Wi-Fi? Plus, if you're looking today, when I go in hotels, I don't even switch on the Wi-Fi of the hotel anymore. I just get on the network because you have roaming. So it's just a question of assessing the risk and assessing the added value that some of the investments make and some of the decisions make. Of course, the business risk is yours. Yeah. And the question is, somebody sitting somewhere in an office in the world saying you need Wi-Fi in the elevators, you say, well, he doesn't have to pay for it. I have to pay for it. Will I lose customers? No, it's a brand guarantee. But again, if you're sitting 2 minutes in an elevator and you want Wi-Fi in a business hotel, okay. But if you're sitting in a resort and you have 3 seconds in an elevator.
Yeah. So I understand.
But if I can just expand on this, actually, I think the real question is not really what an operator brings more or what a third-party operator brings more. The real question is, what does the owner want? That's the real question. Most of the time, and we know it very well here in the region, most of the time we have owners who have one hotel that they are very happy with, but their real focus is residential, manufacturing, whatever it is. And that hotel is less than 5% of their portfolio. So in that case, it might very well be the case where the investor actually doesn't want to hear about it. He just wants the operator to operate it and doesn't really want to think about it. But then you have the other investor that has 50% of his portfolio in hotels. So then he wants to start asking questions, he wants to get more involved. And this is where the operators offer usually the franchise model through an owner operations or through a third party, because that owner wants to be involved.
Yeah.
He wants to ask why there is Wi-Fi in his elevator or not. Whereas the other owner, between you and me, doesn't care. I think most of the people here saw the intervention of Mr. Alabar in the morning. He gave a very clear example. He wants a St. Regis hotel because of obviously the St. Regis hotel, but at the same time because of the added value that he's getting from the retail around him. Because once you have a St. Regis hotel, the lease here is 30% more. That type of owner doesn't really care who is operating his hotel. Actually, he prefers the operator himself to operate his hotel because the added value for him is everything that's around it. So the real question is, what does the owner want?
So if you talk to him,
Also, Amith, sorry, focus and attention, I think are two important components that we bring onto, for any owner. Like Chadi said, what owner wants is important, but it's also what is it that he aspires to get from his asset, Is he looking at a higher ADR, or is she looking at a higher ADR, or is it the positioning that matters to them the most? Some owners, continuously look at employee feedback scores. They also look at guest feedback scores. They check booking.com reviews, to see what the reviews are. For them, it's their prestige, it's their name, it's their first hotel they built, their family name is important. And I think what we bring is sitting down with the owner and understanding what the goal is. If somebody really wants to drive the ADR up for any strategic reasons, and they don't have a debt to service and there's no bank loan, then we try and give them that. We try and obviously coach them, guide them, but at the end of the day, we try and understand what each individual owner wants, whether that's the owner of a 500-key hotel or the owner of a 75-key hotel in Muscat or an 85-key hotel in Dukum. We try and give them what they want and try and deliver on it.
So Tapan, just to build on this, so are you saying this operating model adds more value for more sophisticated institutional owners, or is it more on owners that own one asset?
So owners that own one asset, we can definitely add a lot of value. There's an opportunity cost attached to. They are more emotionally attached. They want to be in control of their asset. They probably want to control the bank account. They don't want to, sign off on a $100,000 authorization on their account. So, the control part comes in for single owner at times. Prestige comes in, attention comes in. We give all that. In case of institutional investors, they may have multi-branded assets. We bring in the cluster shared services, so we add value there. So, we address all kind of owners. Like Jad had said earlier, it's no longer about independent owners. Yes, they are the ones who we go and meet and spend a lot of time with. But institutional investors are, equally now looking at franchise, especially in the upper upscale, up to the upper upscale level, starting from economy.
Anything to build on?
we can find different type of owners, but I think the fact of life that everybody is doing that to make money somehow. And I agree that some owners will want it for prestige, but between this owner and the property, there's a layer, there's a team that has KPIs, right? They need to deliver. First, the big image, which is if they want the prestige, but of course, nobody wants the prestige to pay for all the time. So that team is responsible to deliver both. And that's where I think it's important to keep focusing that it's a business, it has to make the maximum return, whether it is, it has loans, it doesn't have loans, still, right? Somebody has paid for something. And that's the most important part. It's just the focus that we can give. And I look at it, it's like, the kids that go to school. So the kid is the owner. When you send the kid to school, they learn with other kids the same thing. But at home, their parents would focus on that kid. They understand their needs, what he or she likes, dislike, whether they like hot food. It's that focus that we give. The same of the kid getting at home versus school.
I also want to add one thing.
I sound like my dad.
I also want to add one more thing. I mean, with all the brands or the brand operators becoming larger and larger, I mean, in the old days you had one hotel of one brand per city. Now you have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 hotels. You also start getting into an area of related party issues, where if you would basically, between two companies with different shareholders, there would be agreement. When you were an operator, basically operating 30 hotels in one city, it becomes a very gray area, because you get a group request, you get demand, but at the end of the day, the property with the same brand next to me is my competitor. from a brand operator, it's the same company, but in reality, the P&L, the balance sheet, the risk of the hotel next to me with the same brand is a competitor. I mean, I'm not there to defend, my staff is not there to defend his bottom line. And that's where I think with brand operator you make that very clear, and these related party issues where the line becomes gray, oh, move him to the hotel next door. When I was in my previous role, I had this quite a lot. I mean, we had hotels of different brands next to each other. So when my hotel was full in one, I wanted him to go to the other hotel, but another brand. Yeah. So it became a very sensitive issue because technically I was filling, but it is my bottom line, so it was my P&L, my risk. So, and that's where I think having a difference between a franchise operator and a brand also helps for the owner to get that comfort, especially if you have multiple hotels, or to get that, I always call it check and balance. It's not to compete. I don't think there's any bad intention from both parties, but someone has to defend my bottom line. And if my GM doesn't report to me as an investor, it's already a gray line.
Yeah. Just conscious of time. One last question from me before we get on to the audience. What's the future of third-party operations? Which markets do you think we can grow? Which markets you feel we cannot grow?
Well, look, Africa is obviously, you know, a hotspot, has been for many years and will continue to be. I think there is a great opportunity within GCC. Whilst, you know, all of you are focusing as brand operators are focusing on growing in Saudi Arabia, we would love to get there as well, but at the right time. I think that leaves an opportunity for us to grow in UAE, Jordan, Bahrain, Oman. We've seen great growth in Central Asia as well. We are in Uzbekistan. We have an office in Tashkent that we run. We're doing a signing ceremony at 4 o'clock. Please come and attend. It's a very exciting announcement. You know, so we are very, very eager about expanding into Central Asia. Indian Ocean is exciting as well, and I think eventually we'll get into India. We're receiving a lot of requests from there, and we saw the session before us. It's a great market to enter. Egypt is another one. So basically the whole world.
Great. Fantastic. So you've seen the passion of our panelists here. I tried to cover as much as I could, but happy to take on any questions that anybody would have. Oh my God, we have eager 10, 15 hands here. I think it's Kareem.
It is. Hi, thanks for the question. Gentlemen, as you know, Booking.com is a very heavy weight in this market. And with that being said, the commission obviously plays a big piece of our business on a daily basis. Yearly, you negotiate commissions based on the brands and so on, especially if we're looking at the Marriott's, IGs, and so on. Do you think it's a threat moving forward, looking at Booking.com commissions when it comes to a third-party operator on this market?
Kareem, if I may take that on first. Firstly, congratulations for entering the third-party management space. We welcome you to the group. We want to see you on the panel next time around. But look, we are very, any sort of business is good business. So, you know, we are very focused on developing the business for the owner. The channels are what the market determines, and there are obviously overseas sales offices that we can leverage on. There is a loyalty program that we can make great use of for the brands. So as an operator, it is good that Booking.com exists, because you know the commission that they charge sometimes helps us convince owners to convert from white label hotels to branded assets, because there is a considerable value from a non-branded asset to a branded asset, whether it's commission negotiation power with Booking.com, whether it is procurement, you know, through a larger platform where they can add value, and lastly, you know, helps us justify our fees by trying to save that 3% or 4% on the commission. So I think Booking.com is a great channel. It's here to stay. The other OTAs will emerge as well. And I think it's not a threat at all, because the brands are spending considerable amount of money and energy into tech innovation, which probably operators like us can't. So we rely on them to bring that expertise to the table.
Great. One last question. Alex?
For Tapan and Stephan. So, Stephan, you mentioned as a white label operator or third-party operator, I don't have the amount of hotels that I need to take care of like the big brands. one person cannot manage 90 hotels or overlook them. Tapan, may I ask how many properties you currently operate?
We operate a total of about 100 hotels globally.
So how
We
is that
have-
different in that aspect?
I anticipated that, so I didn't walk into the trap. Just to answer that question, we have about 125 corporate employees, and what we do is we actually put boots on the ground wherever we get into up to a certain scale. So we have country heads, we have regional head, we have district heads heading. So usually about 3 to 4 assets is all that a leader would really look after. So we don't have to justify our share price. So we don't have to worry about a lot of savings. We earn enough to make a living, but then we also add back by making sure that the people we hire, the skill set that we hire, is completely focused on delivering. And that's one of the reasons we're very proud that we haven't really ever lost a contract within a contract period. That goes to show that we can deliver.
All right, great. Thank you so much, and congratulations for all the successes that you've had so far. Thank you, and look forward for more such panels and the passion that comes through on not just franchising, the model on third-party operating. Thank you all. A big round of applause.
Thank you.